Hello, everybody. Welcome to our webinar today. I'm Jim Patterson with Upfront Software. And today we're going to be talking about the topic, the ultimate guide to work productivity using EPM Live, really focused on the resource management aspects of managing work within your organization. From an agenda perspective today, we're going to cover what is resource management and who is involved. Who's all involved in that resource management life cycle or process. We'll then talk about the specifics of the resource management life cycle and also intersperse discussion about resource management tools that EPM Live brings to the table in order to help you effectively manage that resource management process. We'll then close out with a demonstration of some of the related features in EPM Live to help facilitate and automate and optimize that resource management process. So from a Resource Management 101 perspective, Wikipedia defines resource management as the efficient and effective deployment of an organization's resources when they are needed. So the key here is that resources can be more than just human resources. They can be any resources that are required to complete a project. But for today's purposes, we're going to be referring to the resource management process for human resources within the organization. So who is involved in this project management process? All resources and all levels of the organization really do play a role in this. For example, executive management, they may not actually allocate the specific resources definitively and specifically, but they are responsible for identifying and selecting the right work. For example, prioritizing and selecting projects and determining, which are the highest priority things to put people on, and basically making sure that we get the right resources staffed within the company. Now, the project management organization, or PMO, they may be in an organization involved more on the planning and assigning of resources, the higher level allocation of resources, or this may be done in conjunction with the resource management or more functional organizations in a more matrixed organization. But the key is that they may be defining who goes on what projects, but maybe not definitively to what degree and what specific things they're going to work on. The project manager, once they get the resources allocated to their particular projects, they're more responsible for the execution of the work and making sure that the resources deliver as planned and controlling the resources and making sure that they perform effectively on the detailed assignments they're given once they've been allocated to the project. Now, the project team, their job collectively is to work together and collaborate and knowledge share to make sure that everyone has the information that they need to complete their specific tasks correctly and in a quality fashion instead of doing it in a vacuum. So their job and their responsibility is to make sure that they work well together collectively as a team. And then the specific team member, they're the ones that really get the specific work assignments. They're the ones that get work put on their plate, detailed tasks, and then they have to execute and deliver on those and provide status along the way to make sure everyone is involved, not only their team, but their project manager and executive management as well. So with that being said, let's look at the overall resource management life cycle. The resource management life cycle, really as depicted here, is really a top-down process. It goes through 5 different stages. All of these stages really must be executed and addressed to some fashion to really do a complete and effective job of resource management. But it's also important to note that when you deploy resource management within an organization, you really do need to factor in the organizational readiness, the project or resource management maturity of the organization. And that may vary from department to department or from resource to resource. The key is to put something in place that you know you can adopt, that you know you can sustain, but also do it in a way to improve the organization, bend but not break the organization, and put yourself on a path to more effective resource management on a roadmap to do continuous improvement in this particular area. So we'll go into each of these areas of resource capacity, resource allocation, resource work management, resource collaboration, and resource task management more specifically as we go on through the presentation. The challenge is that work is everywhere. You have project work, even within waterfall methodology type of projects. Oftentimes the line item in the Gantt chart is defined as the work, but there's so many other actionable things that have to happen around a project to successfully complete it. There's issues that get raised. They could be significant or insignificant, take a lot of time and effort. There could be change requests that can be significant or insignificant. There could be risks that need to be monitored and managed. Just individual specific deliverables, etc., lower level to-dos, whatever it might be. all of them are really workload that impacts people's ability to deliver on a day-to-day basis. In today's world with software development and product development, more iterative methodologies like Agile and Scrum are being used. So the ability to manage backlogs and user stories, defects, and features, and be able to plan them in time-boxed iterations or sprints, they can be interspersed into the mix with the waterfall projects, and it really impacts total workload for resources in a lot of cases, because a lot of resources work on both types of projects. And then you have the ad hoc type of work. You've got the service requests, the incidents, the other things that come up on an unplanned basis. People get assigned to those as well, and they compete for people's time when they're working on projects and non-project work alike. The key is, in order to do effective resource management, you have to factor in all of the work that's going on across an organization. To further compound that issue is that we have disconnected systems and processes. So a lot of times what we find out there today is organizations have a different system, database, or tool in place, or even just a spreadsheet in place for different work types. Service management may be in one tool, application management or application development may be in another tool, traditional business project management may be in another tool. You might have a separate tool for agile projects. The idea there is that those things are all disconnected, they're running in parallel, and to get a complete picture of resource allocation and efficient and effective use of that is very difficult to get to because you have all these silos of information. And on top of that, your resources have to go to all these different tools in order to participate. So the idea is it's inefficient just at a minimum. So with EPM Live, we provide the ability and we provide templated work features that address all these different work types. And you can take as broad or as narrow a definition of work as you want within our solution. So the idea is that you can leverage the ones that we have, and even though they're pre-built and templated, you can modify them to use your nomenclature, your metadata, your data that you want to associate, and characterizations for these things that you like. So it's highly configurable, even though it's very well built out from the get-go. And then just from an overall application perspective, project portfolio and work management have common threads throughout, but depending on the vertical industry you're in, the type of business unit or department that you're in, there's nuances depending on the work that you do. And this example showed up here, for example, the needs of new product development and the methodologies embodied in that might be slightly different than what you're doing with IT planning and control or with professional services or more traditional business project portfolio management. The key is we can accommodate one or more variations all under the EPM Live umbrella by deploying different application variations for different constituencies or different communities within your organization. The key there is, though, because it's all in one solution, we still maintain the ability to get enterprise visibility to all the portfolios across all that, all the schedules, all the resources, all the financial impacts, time reporting across it all, and just business intelligence, dashboarding, etc. across it all as a natural output of the process as opposed to trying to manually or semi-manually compiling it from across all of those different silos of information that we talked about in the previous slide. So let's talk about the first stage in the resource management life cycle, which is resource capacity. Think about this from a top-down perspective, the very highest level of information. It's really about seeing that do we have the resources to meet current and future needs. And at a very high level, long before you have a detailed project plan in place, at a high level for a specific project or portfolio item, you may want to just identify the generic resource types that you want. I need a project manager, I need a DBA, I need a .NET developer, whatever it might be, and determine or estimate the usage for each role. Do I need them for, a half an FTE or a quarter of their time, whatever it might be. Identify potential resource constraints, meaning look at what their remaining availability is. What are they already committed to? Or do they have the skill sets and the abilities to fulfill the role, right? Or by choosing a certain resource, should we up or lower the resource estimate for that particular resource, meaning it might take less or more time depending on the skill set of the resource. And then be able to analyze and adjust the resource plan as needed in collaboration with the functional and the project management organization, and then really finalize a plan for resource allocation, which would be the next step. So at the highest level, you're really thinking about doing this stuff at a high level to, A, justify the project, and also quantify what we're going to need in order to successfully complete that project. In EPM Live, we have tools that help facilitate that. From a resource capacity planning perspective, any portfolio item, whether it be a project or a non-project portfolio item, we can plan resources at that high level, whether generic resource types or named individuals. But the idea is we can plan in terms of full-time equivalents, hours, or percentages of their allocation. Typically in the early stages, generic role-based planning is what's appropriate. You know what you need, but you don't necessarily know who you're going to get to fulfill that at that point in time. And then later on, we can do criteria-based resource matching and substitution, meaning we can do matches for that developer or type of developer to find out who good candidates might be, and always be able to see, as we see in that lower pane with all that red, who might be over-allocated or who might have remaining availability. The key is you plan this on an individual project and portfolio item basis, but it feeds resource analysis and what-if scenario tools when you start looking at this from the collective demand for all these resources. And that's where this resource analyzer comes in. It can actually aggregate all the different resource plans and capacity plans you put down for individual portfolio items and projects and really show you the capacity versus demand in more of a heat map fashion to see where we're over and under allocated. We can then also, because this is really a analysis tool, we can do what-if scenarios. We can deselect maybe lower priority projects. We can maybe drag out the resource requirement for several months to see if delaying the project might help. And we can save those different scenarios for different comparisons and analysis as we look at our alternatives. The key is we can look at budget, actual, and tactical detailed resource allocation roll-ups in this tool and start analyzing scenarios to see where we're at from a total resource management perspective. We also have a modeler that will actually take, since our resources have rates associated with them, we can actually look at total cost implications of doing those same types of what-if scenarios in our modeler tool as well. So we have a number of different what-if modeling tools within the EPM Life solution. And then graphically, we can start depicting this stuff. Yes, we showed the heat map with the very definitive numerics in there, but the idea of being able to roll this up and graphically depict where we're over and under allocated based on our capacity are things that we can do. We can have on-demand views and reports that show totals in a variety of ways, by individual resource, by roles, and seeing if like a specific role, like a DBA, do we have the capacity within that role? Do it by departments. And we have both interactive views that people can manipulate and work with, as well as traditional, more static reports that you can look at and actually distribute to other folks. The key is you can select these things however you like, by portfolio, by project, by resource category, and the idea is get the representation and surface the data in a way, in a format that makes the most sense for what you're looking for. On the resource allocation side of things, this is where we really get to the next step. This is where we're really saying to an organization, and who's ever doing the higher level resource planning, hey, here is who you're going to get for this project to fulfill this role. And then, you can worry about the detailed planning from a project management and more detailed resource management perspective. And this is the case where you match potential candidates to those roles we planned out earlier on. We can assign named resources to those teams. We can confirm, project work or the level of their allocation, and do they have the availability. Verify the resource assignment with necessary parties, like the functional manager that maybe owns them. And then ongoing have the visibility to be able to manage the future shifts in resource assignments as the needs of the project may change and timelines may change. So the key is really allocating someone to a project. And in this case, we use that resource planning tool to basically go in and doing either matches and replacements or fulfillment of requirements, so that instead of generically, you can then say, in this case, these three folks in the top pane of this graph are the members on this project team that are fulfilling those roles. Okay? You start with generic-based resourcing, and you can plan early in the life cycle that way, but then specifically at some point, you've got to determine who's going to be on the project. Now, you could go right to named individuals if you know from day one who's going to be on the project. You don't have to start with that generic and then do the matching to find the appropriate candidates. But when you do that, you can actually start generically and then move and look for potential candidates and see who's got remaining availability to fulfill within certain roles. And then we have real-time reporting on the availability across all of that. Also, once you allocate someone to a project, at some point, and this may be ahead of the curve a little bit in the process, but the project managers gets told you can have this person have time to fill this role on this project. Well, at some point, you're going to build that team, and you're going to know you have that person, and then you're going to have to build a detailed plan for your project, and you can allocate resources to detailed tasks, whether it's waterfall like you see here, whether it's agile, or whether it's more ad hoc in the way it's being done as far as simple task lists. But you can allocate resources to tasks in the schedule and other work item types like issues and change requests, etc. You can use whatever methodology you like, waterfall or agile. And you can also choose what kind of permissions these resources have or access they have to that particular project. We even though we have our own planning tools within EPM Live, we also have a seamless bidirectional integration with Microsoft Projects. So for folks that want to do that, we can actually use those Microsoft Project plans, publish them to EPM Live, and then work with that data on the EPM Live side and send status back to the Microsoft Project owner. So from a resource work management perspective, this is where the rubber starts meeting the road a little bit as far as the detailed pieces of that. So for example, now it's really about managing the project. You've allocated these resources to the project, and the project manager is then managing all the assignments and tracking team member performance and deliverables. So the key is that all the tools that you need for this stage need to be available within this process. So you manage the work assignments at that detailed task level. You track resource performance, you get and provide continuous feedback and status to and from your team, you resolve issues and mitigate potential risks, and then you respond to resource changes that may occur during the life cycle of the project. So we get down to a little bit more on peeling the onion and getting to a little more lower level of detail in this. So for example, as opposed to just assigning resources to a Gantt chart like I was implying in the last slide with our task-based planner, even work items like issues in this example, you can assign resources to any work type. So for example, an issue could be very trivial. It could be an issue that somebody has to resolve with a phone call, and you might just track that and just it's like a to-do. But you might have other significant issues that might require time investment, might require a half a week or a week of a resource's time to resolve or fix. And the idea is when you assign a resource to something like that, we have tools like check resource and find resource that allow you to determine whether that resource even has the bandwidth to tackle this issue before you commit to having that resource on there. And you can actually assign a from and to date like a task and an hours estimate so that you can see how this fits into their total workload. The key there is that any work item can be treated like any other task on a project and be considered real work and real actionable work for a resource. From that perspective, we have tools that not just like the resource analyzer that looked at all that top-down information, we can start rolling up all of the detailed work items for individual resources, and then at the bottom see in a more heat map green and red allocation where people are over or under allocated. And this is for both project and non-project work or any other work items. These could be service requests as well as project tasks, as well as issues, as well as any work item that you decide to adopt within the solution. And you can start looking at this for individuals, for groups of individuals, like by resource, by team, by department, whatever it may be. But by having this kind of visibility up front, we preclude or give you the ability to see where people are already allocated before you purposely over-allocate them in the future. And as you go on and as timelines shift, seeing whether or not other new issues have arisen based upon the way work has shifted. And then the more static reporting world, you can actually look at those same types of information with simple graphs, with drill down capability in the report so we can drill into what specific projects and work efforts they're on and what the specific tasks are on and whether or not these two resources are under their capacity. It looks like in this case Adam and Alice are working well below their capacity as far as having the ability to take on more work later on. What's nice about doing more traditional reporting is that you can push these things out very easily to other people in common formats like Word and PDF, Excel, or whatever, or look at them in a viewer interactively. Now, another key piece here is the resource collaboration stage. Now, once resource teams are built on projects and they need to work together, we really need to have that team work effectively together. The key here is for them to have the ability to acknowledge and define shared goals and objectives that we're all working to. And then they can actually track status and real-time updates, but share information to help them all be more efficient in what they're delivering. Deliver the right things, make sure that the integration and touch points of different people working on different things come together at the end of the day. And these resources must communicate and work well together and share information if they're going to come together well at the end of the day and deliver on track with a quality deliverable. So this is a key piece that needs to take place in the status, in the overall state of things. So from a resource collaboration perspective, there's a bunch of tools that we're providing. We provide workspaces, for example, that allow people to have a common forum for where they can communicate information and ideas. There's comment streams where people can have threaded discussions in one central place and discuss any element of the system. They can share calendars, issues, risks, and other deliverables in a common forum. It's give each other to-dos. And it's a centralized source of information and knowledge sharing, as well as sharing on documents and other things like that. So the key here is that you could have different workspace types depending on the nature and type of projects that your teams are on, and that facilitate the unique way that they have to work on that particular project, so it's not a one-size-fits-all proposition. In that regard, having these types of forums and collaborative tools are very helpful. Then from a resource task management perspective, which is a collaborative aspect to that as well, we're really looking at the case where resources are now aggregating and gathering all the work assignments they're getting from probably a multitude of directions. They're going to have the facility to provide status and updates in an effective and efficient manner, and then monitor the overall health of the work and the dependencies across all that. The idea is to be able to make it easy for resources to do that and make the people who are managing those resources have easy visibility into where things stand. One of the key things that we do in EPM Live is provide you a My Work area. This My Work is one central location to see everything that's been put on your plate of all the work types you've adopted. They could be workflow approvals that need your attention. They could be issues that are put on your plate, project tasks, to-dos, service requests, whatever it is, one central place to go look at that. And you can provide status updates on any of these work items from one particular location. You don't have to go to multiple tools or locations. It could be as simple as checking the box on the right-hand side to say I'm completed on a to-do, or it could be editing the item and putting narrative inside the properties of that, or percent completes and things like that to provide status on where we're at. A nice feature is that this My Work capability can be rendered in your Microsoft Outlook. So if you live in Outlook on a day-to-day basis, you can get these as a special class of tasks and provide updates on these right from within there, and the updates get passed to EPM Live as if it was done right in the EPM Live solution. And the idea, there's tools for ways for you to manage this work so you can prioritize and flag what you're working on first and those types of things. So the key is one central place to go, an efficient way for resources to stay on top of everything that's on their plate. If you want to take it to the next level and you want people to report actuals, we have an integrated time reporting perspective. So instead of just putting progress on here like percent complete, you can report time against any element in the system and at any level. So for example, you can report at the project level. You report at the detailed task level, or you might choose some interim level like a phase or a gate level to report time on. The thing is that the timesheet is fully configurable to meet the needs of your organization and gives you a really good ability on a time phase basis to compare plan versus actual data. You can also capture notes and comments on each time entry so people can have explanations on what they spent time for, especially if you have external customers where you have people question what time is being billed for or people are getting charged back for. We often and very routinely integrate this data with financial or billing systems to support that process as well. From a task management perspective, just reminders and notifications are built in throughout the system. You can have more passive reminders that let you know in each category of work type, where you have new things or things that are overdue. We have a whole notifications engine that allows you to get notified in a more social media-like fashion like you see in the on the upper left portion on the general notifications, where you can see things that require your attention. You've got new issues. You've got things that require your attention. You have approvals that are needed. And the idea is that you have configurable parameters on these notifications that say what and when you are notified on things. And we also supplement that with email notifications. So if you look here on the lower right, you can actually have email sent to you on a semi-regular basis or a daily or a twice-a-day basis that says, in this case, you're looking at what's overdue, what tasks are scheduled in the upcoming time frame, what active tasks you have, what other things are on your plate. The idea is that you'll get the reminders and notifications to help you from letting things slip through the cracks, which can often happen when we multitask so much these days. So those are just some of the tools and capabilities in that resource management life cycle and process. And with that, I thought I'd go into a demonstration of the tool and show you some of the things in action. So right now we're looking at maybe a typical home page for a project manager at EPM Live. Steve Masters is this fictional resource or person who's more of a project manager role. And his home page has got a few things. He's got menu items and navigation to all the major areas of the tool. He's got a little mini portfolio that lets him focus on the projects that he's specifically interested in. He's a project manager, he's an owner, or he's a team member on them. He's got a mini My Work area here that's got all of his current and overdue items on there that he can go in and either complete with a checkbox or edit these to provide updates. And then from a collaboration and commenting perspective, he's got a work stream in here that basically, a comment stream that allows him to participate in all his active conversations in a very social media or Facebookish-like fashion so that he can go in and participate in all the capabilities that he wants. And you can do discussions on projects, on detailed tasks, on issues, whatever it might be, with the appropriate people that you need to. And he also has the whole notifications area here where he can see everything that's been put on his plate. This may be supplemented with email notification if you just want to turn on that capability. But the idea is you can get into the specifics of any item and fulfill on that item right from the notification itself. So if you have a task that's in here, you get the information. This will also be in the body of that email notification so that you can go into it, get to it, and then fulfill on it right from the notification itself. So the key is there's a lot of communicative things that are going on within just the home page. So a lot of things can get accomplished just from a resources home page. Let me go to a project center with a broader list of projects, that kind of broader portfolio. And there may be a number of different projects that are assigned with different portfolios or different categorizations as we go on through. And in this regard, you can have as many different views of this portfolio as you like to show different metrics, different filterings, different groupings, different totalings, etc. But for example here, on a particular project, we have the ability to do a lot of different things. And we're focused on the resource management aspect of things, and we can basically build or edit a resource plan for any particular portfolio item. So for example here, if I went into, say, this sample project and say, let me edit the resource plan, you could have all different types of resource planning built into here. You can plan in terms of hours, full-time equivalents, or percentages of allocation. You can choose what the defaults are. But the idea here is that you can then build the resources that you need. Let me go into a slightly different project here just for a second. So for example, notice that I've got a DBA requirement. In this case, they've already fulfilled it with Ed Meadows. They have a developer requirement. They've already fulfilled it with Adam Barr. But let's just say we're very early on in the cycle here, and I want to do generic planning. I could come in here and say, you know, what I really is missing on this resource plan is a project manager. And I could very easily just drag the project manager role up to the project and say I need a project manager on here generically. I can toggle between hours and FTEs. So for example, here I could plan this in a very simple fashion and say, for example, let me allocate that project manager requirement to say that I need a half an FTE across the entire life cycle of that project. Spread it across whatever the duration of the project is, and I now have that as a requirement. At some point, I might put some notes of explanation if I have special requirements for the needs of that project management requirement, and I can work with the functional managers or the PMO who provides them. But at some point, I'm going to want to fulfill or decide who's going to fulfill that project manager role. In this case, up above for these, they did what they call a fulfillment, and they said this is the original requirement of 1 FTE, that Ed is going to fulfill that full FTE, and there's no unfulfilled requirement here. On the project management side of things, I'm probably not going to have 2 project managers on here because you could add other DBAs to fill that requirement. But I could simply do a simple match on this project manager role and see what's available to me. And I could, for example, could take Steve Masters and I could drag him up and I say, Steve is going to just do a one-to-one replacement and going to become the project manager on this team, and it's going to update and reflect his current availability as we go on through. The key here is it's simple drag and drop resource planning capability that goes on through this. Now, if you want to look at this stuff in the aggregate, in a more total fashion, we can come in here and let's say we selected all of the projects in the portfolio. I can go into what's called a resource analyzer. And it's loading up the resource plans for all of the different perspectives. And I don't think I have data very early on in 2012 here, so let me just say, let me look this from March 2013 on. And now I can see specific resources based upon all the detailed resource planning information that's been aggregated. I can see, for example, that Alice in the DBA ranks has significant overallocation here. And I can do things to maybe what-if analysis on this. For example, I could say, geez, what if we didn't do the feature request database project, and I deselect that. I can take a look and say, you know, Alice could do this, and probably with a little overtime could probably fulfill on this piece of it well, because it's not as severe an overallocation. So I could actually save that as a scenario and say, no feature request database project or something like that, and use this as a scenario we can evaluate with others later on. Or maybe what we need to do is say we have to do the feature request database project, and say maybe the alternative might be to take this project and take the whole resource requirement and drag it out 6 months and see if that helps us out at all. And the idea here, I can see, you know, at least from an Alice perspective, it doesn't solve the issue like it would be just not to do it at this point. But the idea is I could save that as a scenario, and I can compare other different alternatives as we go on through. The key is I can undo these, and I can start doing all this analysis without impacting the core data as we go on through. Also down below, as I start looking at things like this, I can drill into details. I can say, show me the details on this particular resource plan. And I can go in and say, you know, what projects, without having to open up each individual project, I can see that Alice is overloaded because she's on these 3 specific projects. And in these areas where she has key overloading, she's got significant responsibilities on 3 different projects during this month of November. So I can drill in and get the information I want. I can group them in a variety of different ways. I can do filtering and grouping in a very selective fashion. I can also go in, and if I was looking at saying, geez, from a perspective of the DBAs, do I have DBA capacity to maybe relieve Alice on this? I could start totaling those things down below by role rather than by individual resource. And I can go down here and I can say, you know, it looks like the DBA ranks are green all the way through. I can maybe go in here and say, you know, maybe there's some alternatives in here where I can actually replace her on some of this time frame with maybe another DBA resource. So a lot of capabilities on the way to analyze and do what-if perspectives and visibility into that. Now I did that by selecting a bunch of projects, and I did that by then having it tell me what the resultant resource implications are of doing all those projects with all those capacity plans. But what if I'm a functional manager? Let's say, to continue on that storyline, what if I own the DBAs and I'm interested in looking at this from a resource pool perspective, resource-centric perspective? So let's just say I look at the resource pool by roles, and I've got a number of DBAs, and I select that group, and I go to look at the same resource analyzer, but I'm coming at it from a resource-centric perspective. I'm just focused on my team. So what it's telling me is that these are the projects that our resources are on. And I can also see that Alice is the only one that's in the red. So what that means is I could go into one of her projects, like the feature request database, and I could possibly go into the resource planner and do that match and replace and maybe put someone else on here to relieve her of that. So from a resource management perspective, I could just focus on the DBAs as we go on through here. So the same type of tool, but more of a functional manager's perspective as opposed to a project management or a PMO-like perspective. Also, as we go on through here, I could go take a look at it from the more bottoms-up perspective. I assume you guys are familiar with project planning, and using either Microsoft Project or our own online planner, you assign resources to detailed tasks. I was just looking at the capacity planner from a top-down perspective. But if I came in here from a bottoms-up perspective and I wanted to say look at Alice and Ed, for example, and I wanted to look at the assignment planner, which is going to roll up from the bottom all the detailed task assignments. Let me pick a time frame where maybe gathers more tasks in this demo database. Now what it's doing is taking all the details and rolling them up and letting me know what that means. So I can see that Alice has different work items over a period of time that it looks like for the most part we're within capacity both for Alice and Ed. And we can view this information from a number of different perspectives. I could basically come in and say, show it to me group by project. So within each of the resources, I can look at that, and then I can say basically what projects and what detailed tasks or work items has Alice been assigned on these particular projects. So she has detailed tasks on these 2 projects, and as I zoom it out to fit that, I can see how that applies. So the key is I can do top-down and bottom-up individually, or through the assignment planner. What's nice is I could actually come in here, look at all my DBAs, and in the resource analyzer, I can come in and look at the bottoms-up and top-down in the same perspective. So right now, I was looking at all this capacity planning information that I showed you early on. What if I decided to change my totals and say, show me the scheduled work, which is the roll-up of all that bottoms-up tasks and issues and work items that are there. And I can come in here and look at a comparison between the two. Meaning, for example, in this case, it looked like I was going to use 176 hours of Alice, but it looks like from a detailed task perspective, I only planned detailed tasks for her for 18 hours that month. So I can compare the top-down and bottom-up requirements as we go on through. I can do the same thing with actuals. I can compare it with actual work from our timesheets, etc. So very robust, fully functioned resource management information as we go through and manage and allocate those resources. And as going through a capacity report, if I wanted to look at a particular resource or a group of resources, I can run traditional resource capacity reports. For Alice, I'll say, let me choose all of her work types. Let me run this from, say, October through December, and let me look at it in terms of weeks instead of months like I did prior. And then it'll focus in either her or whatever resource selections I've made, and I can see in a very static report through a viewer here that she's within her capacities in all these different weeks. I could drill into this static report. Even though it's static, I can drill in and see which work effort she's on, and I can see specifically what task she might be on each of those things to see where she's allocated. So I can start running these aggregation reports on a very on-demand basis and can actually put these things out to common formats like PDF or Word. And in this reporting tool, you can put these things out to predefined distribution lists on a scheduled basis so they go out to an audience as you like. So either you can interactively work with the tool or you can have reports pushed out to people who insist on having reports pushed out to them. Okay. And in our areas, we have a full reports area that allows you to do all kinds of analytics. You know, we have classic reporting, and finally we have some more dashboard analytics reporting, and we provide a bunch of out-of-the-box reporting, which we can talk about on another day. But the idea here is that the way to surface data can be, you know, views within EPM Live, which is based on SharePoint. We can have SQL reporting services. We have a reporting database that allows you to run any BI tool you prefer internally against that database. So you can use your tools of your choice. And we've added Upland Analytics, which really has more advanced dashboarding and reporting capability and an easy report builder that doesn't require anybody to develop any code or do anything highly technical in order to make those reports work. So with that, I'd probably like to close out the webinar by saying I really appreciate your time and attention today. We've really focused just on the productivity and resource management aspect of EPM Live today. There's so much more in here from a fully functional project portfolio and just overall work management perspective that if you'd like to see more, please contact us at sales@epmlive.com or go to our website at epmlive.com and request a trial or a demo. It's right prominent on our homepage. And you know, from that perspective, I would just say we are a solution that is developed on the SharePoint platform. We leverage its facilities, but we add a lot of project, resource, and work management capabilities to that platform. We offer it to you as a either a cloud solution you can subscribe to and run it off of our servers, or it's a solution that can be installed directly into your existing SharePoint farm. If you're a SharePoint shop and you're using SharePoint for other content management collaborative capabilities, we're just an incremental add into that SharePoint environment. So you can actually utilize our solution in either fashion. Once again, my name is Jim Patterson. I'm pleased to present to you today, and we'll be sending this recording out to you along with the slides for you folks that registered for the webinar. Stay in touch. Check out our website for future upcoming webinars. We have them on a very regular basis, and also have a lot of history out there with recorded webinars that have already been done in the past. So as you have interest that's going on through, please check us out or contact us. Thanks again, and have a great day.